Vlad III, the Impaler. Vlad didn't rule. He terrorized. His name echoed like a sentence. As the ruler of Wallachia, he used impalement not as punishment, but as a tool of state policy. Stakes were raised in endless rows, and accounts describe entire forests of bodies, a calculated spectacle meant to paralyze invaders and rivals. His method was as technical as it was monstrous. Vlad chose the height of the stakes, the angle of entry, the precise depth needed to prolong suffering. He organized mass executions with military logistics, turning massacres into public messages powerful enough to make entire armies rethink their campaigns before they even crossed his borders. Here is the number that feels like fiction. Contemporary accounts report 20 to 30,000 people impaled in a single episode during his defense against the Ottomans. And some sources suggest his total death toll may have exceeded 100,000. A scale so staggering that even hardened conquerors hesitated when approaching his lands. But even absolute terror develops fractures. Vlad's policies were effective but unsustainable. He accumulated as many internal enemies as external ones, and his own brutality fueled conspiracies, betrayals, and crises of legitimacy. In the end, Vlad III vanished like many extreme tyrants, killed in battle, beheaded, his head sent to Constantinople as a trophy. The figure who once seemed untouchable became irrelevant the moment he fell, leaving behind a legacy remembered only as a specter of extreme cruelty. Genghis Khan. No name in history carries the same overwhelming weight as Genghis Khan, the human thunderclap who made entire continents tremble. Imagine a leader whose presence alone could move thousands of riders, as if they were a single body, a political and military force shaped by the chaos of the steppe. His army was a machine almost impossible to believe. Horsemen who rode nearly 60 miles a day. Archers who could fire with precision while galloping at about 40 miles per hour. And a discipline so harsh that deserting meant condemning your entire family. This mobile war engine didn't just win battles. It wiped cities off the map with cold, methodical efficiency. Modern estimates suggest that his campaigns caused between 30 and 40 million deaths. Numbers so massive they may have lowered global temperatures by turning farmland back into wilderness. For a brief moment, his military force looked powerful enough to consume the entire world. But even the greatest storms eventually fade. The empire he built began to crack the moment he died. Internal disputes, rival bloodlines, and ambitious generals turned the structure that once supported him into the fault line that tore it apart. In the end, Genghis Khan wasn't defeated by an enemy. He was undone by the inevitable collapse of the giant he created. His descendants continued to rule, but the man who once stood as tall as a mountain slowly dissolved into dust along the very routes he once controlled. Tamerlane, Timur. Tamerlane marched as if every city were nothing more than another fragile piece on his vast board. He didn't command armies, he commanded storms. His campaigns swept across Central Asia with a precision that felt impossible for the 14th century. Timur perfected a dark craft, the architecture of terror. He advanced on multiple fronts, relied on rapid horseback reconnaissance, and crushed resistance with devastating pincer maneuvers. When he captured rebellious cities, he built pyramids of skulls, sometimes more than 70,000, leaving behind landscapes marked by monuments of pure military intimidation. The climax of this almost unreal brutality is staggering. Estimates suggest his campaigns caused between 15 and 20 million deaths, an impact so severe that some regions took centuries to recover. His forces, highly mobile and trained for simultaneous close combat and mounted archery, moved like a living extension of his will. But the same boundless ambition that raised him began to break the logic of his empire. As he pushed to expand even further toward China, Timur met the one enemy no general can command: time. Disease, brutal weather, and impossible logistics choked an empire that demanded more than any man could sustain. Without heirs capable of keeping his monstrous war machine alive, Timur's world collapsed almost as fast as it was built. His vast empire didn't fall in some grand, decisive war. It simply evaporated, fading into irrelevance, a colossus remembered more for terror than for endurance. Attila the Hun. Attila didn't simply advance. He fell upon the world like a calamity. To the Romans, he was literally the scourge of God, a force that tore apart borders, diplomacy, and armies as if they were made of straw. His troops, masters of the composite bow and of extreme mobility, could fire in any direction without ever slowing their gallop. A tactical nightmare for the slower, heavier Roman legions. The Huns operated like a coordinated swarm, lightning-fast strikes, calculated retreats, and psychological siege tactics. Attila exploited political weaknesses with surgical precision, demanding enormous tributes under the threat of complete destruction. He was a strategist who understood that fear is cheaper than war, and he used it as his primary weapon. And then there's the staggering statistic that defines his era. His armies could travel up to 90 miles in a single day, sliding across Europe like violent ghosts. Wherever they passed, they left devastation so severe that chronicles describe entire regions left empty, unable to recover for decades. But even historical monsters carry fractures. Attila's empire depended almost entirely on his presence, a colossus balanced on a single pillar. When his health declined and his sudden death arrived, the entire political structure trembled instantly. Without its absolute leader, the Hunnic machine collapsed at high speed. Rival tribes scattered, territories were lost, and what had once been Europe's greatest terror dissolved into insignificance. Attila vanished, and with him vanished the shadow he had cast over an entire continent. Hernan Cortes. Cortes didn't arrive in Mexico. He erupted there like a seismic event, with just over 500 soldiers, 16 horses, and a handful of cannons. He launched himself against a civilization of millions. His genius and his coldness came from fusing diplomacy, betrayal, and warfare into a single machine. Exploiting local rivalries became his most lethal weapon. Technically, Cortes combined three elements that made him devastating. Shock cavalry used as psychological panic, harquebuses capable of piercing dense formations, and strategic alliances with peoples who hated Mexico rule. He also used interpreters like Malinche, not just to translate, but to manipulate critical information and turn entire cities against Tenochtitlan. Here is the staggering statistic that defines his dark reputation. With a force that never exceeded a few thousand allies, he confronted an empire of 10 to 20 million people. He was directly involved in a process that wiped out around 90% of the indigenous population, largely due to diseases brought by his men, but also through a sequence of brutal massacres he authorized. But even architects of destruction eventually hit their limits. Cortes's streak of luck began to crack when the Spanish crown started to fear his growing autonomy. Internal conflicts, political disputes, and clashes with rival administrators steadily eroded his prestige. In the end, Hernan Cortes died far from the power he believed he had secured. No grand titles. Overlooked in the administrative shadows of Spain, the conqueror who once reshaped a continent ended his life in irrelevance, eclipsed by an empire that used him, and then moved on without ever looking back. Francisco Pizarro. Pizarro descended upon the Inca Empire as if he were claiming an abandoned land. With fewer than 200 men, he hurled himself against a civilization numbering in the tens of millions. His tactic was simple and ruthless: manufacture chaos on purpose. His true technical edge was his precision and strategic manipulation. Pizarro mastered the art of dividing to conquer. He fueled internal disputes among Inca factions, exploited aristocratic rivalries, and dismantled the enemy chain of command before even initiating open warfare. He institutionalized the use of interpreters and informants, turning improvised espionage into a decisive weapon. And here's the statistically unreal climax. With a force small enough to fit into 2 modern buses, Pizarro captured the man who ruled an empire stretching more than 3,000 miles, controlling resources from the Andes to the Amazon. The fall of Tawantinsuyu didn't unfold over decades. It collapsed in under 2 years, accelerated by epidemics, betrayals, and massacres led or authorized by him. But the same machinery that lifted him up also forged his downfall. Internal greed among the Spaniards erupted into a bloody civil war, brothers against brothers, soldiers against soldiers, as Peru's gold turned into political poison. In the end, Pizarro was stabbed to death in his own residence, betrayed by countrymen hungry for power. The conqueror who toppled an entire empire became irrelevant just as quickly as he destroyed it, reduced to a disputed name in dusty records while history kept burning around him. If you enjoyed this kind of content, make sure to subscribe and leave a like on this video. And let me know in the comments what video you'd like to see next. or even if you'd like a continuation of this series. Your comment decides everything on this channel. I'll see you in the next one.